And let's begin the news with African leaders who have been tasked to form a common front in combating the root causes of terrorism on the continent. And this was during a high-level African counter-terrorism summit holding in Abuja, where leaders present say terrorism impedes development and the growth of democracy. Amadine Uyi reports.
Terrorism has become a menace for countries in sub-Saharan Africa, with terrorism and violent extremism being responsible for the displacement of over 6.3 million persons across the Sahel region. Many say terrorism is having its toll on the continent.
Terrorism snaps at the very fabric of the tranquil, prosperous, and just society we seek to build for ourselves and our children.
That our continent is facing a multifaceted threat, terrorism, that we have been tirelessly combating for a number of years now, does not just threaten the institutions of our countries, not only our political regimes or our populations, it also threatens the very essence of our states.
At this African high-level meeting on counter-terrorism, attended by regional leaders, many of them say terrorism is impacting negatively on development and democracy.
The theme of this high-level African counter-terrorism meeting, strengthening regional cooperation and institution building to address the evolving threats of terrorism, is timely. It reflects the urgent need to confront the impacts of terrorism that continue to disrupt our lives.
Terrorism is a threat to international peace and security, particularly in Africa, where its impact is most felt. Daesh, Al-Qaeda, and their affiliates have made some significant gains in the Sahel and are moving southward to the Gulf of Guinea.
Terror cannot coexist in the same space as democracy and good governance. Just as darkness and light cannot endure in the same room at the same time.
They call on leaders to unite to tackle the scourge of terrorism.
We must pay attention to our women and girls who bear the greatest impact of insecurity, often the victims of terrorism, who deserve our solidarity and who have a right to remedy and reparations.
While terrorism troubles us greatly at the moment, we do well by remembering terrorism is not of Africa. We must tell this imported evil that wants to bend and break us, that it shall not succeed.
Leaders here agree that a sure way to combating terrorism is addressing the root causes of the scourge. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadine Uyi.
Nigeria's former president, Goodluck Jonathan, has tasked members of the National Assembly to consider the integration of a National Border Guard and a National Coast Guard into the proposed bill for the establishment of state police. The former president made this known during a national dialogue on state policing, saying that the current security architecture of the nation's borders are inadequate to tackle peculiar security challenges being witnessed. Our correspondent, Idong Joseph, tells us more.
In recent years, the clamor for the establishment of state police has drawn diverse arguments, with some for and others against the proposal. While the escalating insecurity situation in the country calls for urgent action, Nigeria's House of Representatives, after passing the bill for the second reading, has convened a national dialogue to get recommendations and inputs from stakeholders to finding lasting solutions.
Let me state categorically that the House and indeed the National Assembly does not have a fixed position on this matter. Our role is to facilitate a dialogue and generate consensus.
When I set up the 2014 National Dialogue, within that period, we have a lot of challenges in the country. People were agitating so many areas. But when we set up that dialogue, one thing that the whole almost 500 delegates agreed without much ado was the issue of state police.
Nigeria's former president, Goodluck Jonathan, and the former head of state, Abdulsalami Abubakar, while sharing their experiences, urged the consideration of inputs from traditional rulers and the consideration of border guards and coastal guards into the bill.
If a stranger enters a village within hours, the village head knows about that stranger, and through their means of communication, the emir is aware.
The National Assembly, while you are debating or conducting a public hearing on the state police, these issues of National Border Force must be considered.
On the issue of state police, it is the submission of the leadership of the Nigerian police force that Nigeria is yet to mature and ready for the establishment of state-controlled police.
President Bola Tinubu, who was represented by his vice, pledged the commitment of the executive to implement the legislation when passed.
The insights we gain will inform our administration's approach to supporting legislation that not only enhances the capacity of our police force, but also strengthens the bonds of trust between law enforcement and the public.
The discussion for the abduction of state policing has always courted controversies. Stakeholders here are calling on Nigeria's National Assembly to give more attention to issues bordering on right of abuse of citizens, financing of the police, and modalities for their recruitment. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idonk Joseph.
The Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, believes the country is not mature for state policing despite the myriad of security challenges facing it. He spoke during the National Dialogue on State Police held in Abuja. The IGP argued, among other factors, that there is a potential for abuse of power by state political leadership. He said that the state governors could use the police forces under their control for political or personal gain and undermine human rights and security. And to unpack this, I'm joined by security expert and executive director, Ecclesia Trust Foundation, Emmanuel Ikole. Good afternoon. Glad to have you join me. Please unmute yourself. Let me carry on with my question. Emmanuel, what's your reaction to the statement made by the IGP of police saying Nigeria isn't mature enough for state policing?
For me, as a citizen, I actually agree with the IGP of the police. Because of my own reasons, it may actually also be similar to what he also thinks. There are a lot of things to be done that will serve as prerequisites before having a state police. And if we are really ready, those things will have to be put on ground. More of trying to have accountability, oversight agencies, from having a police service commission. If we are working towards having a state police, it means this oversight agency of the police service commission won't just be in Abuja. They have to be spread across the 36 state plus FCT. That can be one. There have to also be internal complaint mechanism, which I believe the OC in charge of all states of the CRU have been appointed. But there's yet to also be capacity building on what they should be doing, their roles of what they should be doing at that level, and the channel of reporting and the channel of communication, the appointment of CPs, their roles and their powers to the extent, because if at the level of states, there are certain decisions that the CPs can take without recourse to the IGPs, like we currently have, that every decision they take, they must take permission from the IGP. But if it goes at the level of the states, there are certain decisions that they on their own can take. And secondly, also the limits of the powers of the governors on what they can do in appointment, and maybe also in the punishment of, or also dismissal of the CPs at the level of the states. So there are other things we need to go. And if at the level, at the federal level now, punishments of erring officers have not yet been done, it means the system is yet not right.
Just to quickly chip in, Emmanuel, if I may just quickly chip in there, one of the things you talked about, you mentioned the need for oversight mechanisms. Now, how would oversight mechanisms, just expatiate on that, how would oversight mechanisms be established to ensure accountability of state police forces to the public now, and not just to the state government?
Okay, currently system we have the Police Service Commission, which plays oversight on the police, and their role is appointment, promotion, discipline of officers. And currently, they are just at Abuja, and they have less than 100 staff. If you have to go at the level of states, it means you have to appoint persons or recruit persons to play oversight over the police in the whole 36 states. Do we have, is the state ready yet to get those persons all over the country yet? That is one. Internally, we have the complaint response unit that luckily has been part of the Police Act, which mandates the police to actually appoint persons to head erring to aid discipline erring officers in all the states. Currently, the OC in charge has just been appointed, but then the members of this CRU all over the states that have been appointed, have any training been done so far? No. So that means even if you appoint them, there has to be trainings of the internal complaint mechanism and the external oversight agency, which is the Police Service Commission. There will also be need to purge the national human rights or state coordinators that have not been functioning and make them functional before we go to the level of states. Because if some of these issues are not being fixed now, and then we divide, they will move to the level of states. If at this level we cannot discipline and the system has not been able to purge erring officers, when it goes at the level of state, it means you have only shared this problem among the states.
Indeed, Emmanuel. Yes, I wish we had more time, but we're pressed for time. Indeed, a lot of questions need be asked when it comes to state policing. But thank you so much for your time on the news. Emmanuel Okola, security expert and executive director, Exeter Trust Foundation. Thank you once again.
Thank you for having me.
You're watching the news on News Central TV. Let's take a short break. Stay with us. Thank you for staying tuned. And now to health matters. At the last week of April in area, the global immunization community celebrates the life-saving power of vaccines. This year's celebration of World Immunization Week marks 50 years of the essential program on immunization. This is a global endeavor to ensure equitable access to life-saving vaccines for every child, regardless of their geographic location and socioeconomic status. The theme for this year is Humanly Possible, Saving Lives Through Immunization. Established in 2012, World Immunization Week was created to raise awareness about the importance of immunization. And this is to encourage people to work in their communities to protect people's health through vaccination. And to help understand the significance of this week, I'm joined by Chief of Health, UNICEF Nigeria, Eduardo Celades. Good afternoon. Glad to have you join me.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me here today.
All right. Let me start by asking, what's the essence of the theme for this year, which is Humanly Possible, Saving Lives Through Immunization? And then how is UNICEF living up to this theme?
Right. The expanded program of immunization was launched 50 years ago and had tremendous success. More than 154 lives have been saved since then. However, what we are seeing now, and we are seeing this year since COVID-19, that vaccine hesitance, reluctance, misinformation, mistrust is ramping. And what we are seeing is we need to reinforce the message. We need to fall back in love again, right after 50 years, to ensure that all children are immunized. So that's the essence. In Nigeria, still 2.2 million children don't have any single vaccine, right? So the idea is vaccination, immunization should be inclusive for all. So all the children have access to the vaccines that they need.
But when it comes to vaccine hesitancy in Nigeria, what role is UNICEF playing in addressing this challenge within Nigeria, and how it's affecting immunization efforts?
So we as UNICEF, we support the efforts of the government in three aspects. The first one is to bring the vaccines to the country. So more than 400 million vaccines are brought to Nigeria every year. Unfortunately, not yet they are locally produced, but hopefully in a few years they will be produced here in Nigeria. Our second support to the government is to strengthen primary health care. We need more doctors, more nurses, more midwives, better infrastructure, more drugs, better financing. So we are supporting primary health care under the leadership of the Federal Ministry of Health. And the third one is on the supporting the communities and working at community level to really work with community leaders, with traditional leaders to get children immunized.
I know you've talked about working with the government, working with community leaders. How about those areas marginalized? You know, what measures are being taken to overcome barriers to vaccine access faced by marginalized communities or even those living in the hard-to-reach areas in Nigeria?
You're fully right. It's not, we normally think that hard-to-reach areas are only like in very far and very rural areas of Zamfara or Sokoto or other places like that, but it's not the case. In Lagos, we can have Makoko. In Kebbi, we saw like urban slums as well, where children are not immunized. And I just came back from Bayelsa when 20,000 children living in riverine islands and the riverine, they don't have access to vaccines. So the hard-to-reach areas can be anywhere. And our job as UNICEF is to really try to reach them and to work with the communities to ensure that all children, they get the immunization that they need.
Now, looking at the global progress made, in this sector of immunization, what are the main obstacles in Nigeria in the effort to achieve optimum vaccine coverage? And how are you tackling or working to overcome these challenges?
Yes, we have like two major challenges. One is like the big inequalities. We are seeing in places like in Northwest, for example, where immunization coverage is very, very low, with a lot of children that they don't have any vaccine, right? And as well, they don't have other services like food, like water, like sanitation, education, etc. So this is like a proxy for poverty. So that's one of the big challenges, the inequalities. The second challenge is the weak health system, especially primary health care. We need more primary health care facilities working 24/7 with more health workers, better trained with quality of care. So our work as UNICEF is to support the efforts of the government to address these two main issues, inequalities, but as well to strengthen the health system.
Thank you so much for your time on the news and, of course, your kind company. Eduardo Celadis, Chief of Health, UNICEF Nigeria. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much.
The national chairman of Nigeria's opposition party, the National Rescue Movement, has urged aggrieved members of the party to sheet the swords and embrace peace over the control of the party's leadership. This followed a ruling by the Federal High Court in Abuja, which dismissed the suit filed by aggrieved members of the party seeking to sack the national chairman. The court ruled affirming Isaac Ude as the substantive national chairman of the National Rescue Party.
That the party did not perform well at the last general election, and they are now ascribing it to their national chairman. And it's not part of the disciplinary actions under the constitution of the party. So they came to court, and they have been parading themselves, writing to INEC that INEC should see them as they purported to have appointed an acting national chairman and be acting illegally. They themselves came to court and sued INEC and the national chairman. And by God's grace, today, the Federal High Court, Honorable Justice James Kolawole Omotosho, delivered judgment, dismissed their suit, and deprecated them for undemocratic actions.
In as much as all the actions they took at the meeting was declared invalid outrightly. So the matter permanently should be laid to rest. And that is the condition of the matter.
Several elections come and go, but the gap in the representation of women in elective positions is always brought to the fore. Despite interventions to bridge this gap, gender experts say the gap keeps widening. In this report, our correspondent, Omolola Ololade, examines why the gap persists and what must be done to ensure proper representation of women in politics and what the future holds for women in Nigerian politics.
Nigeria remains Africa's most populous country with a population of 200 million. Women make about half of this number, yet underrepresented in politics. Although some of these women run for elective positions, gender stereotypes, cultural biases, and the political system have remained an obstacle to the success stories of many.
If the parties, they always call the political parties the gatekeepers. It's who they allow to enter, who will enter. If we could have parties that would be more interested in us having competent people, people with character, people with capacity, with integrity, and so on.
The 2023 elections were another opportunity to change the narrative, but the outcome of the results, particularly from the parliamentary elections and available data, suggests the gap will only grow wider. Out of the 1,607 candidates that ran for governorship elections in 2019, 80 were women. In the governorship elections in 2023, there were 837 candidates and only 24 were women. Statistics show there are less than 2,000 female candidates out of the more than 15,000 that ran for elective positions in the 2023 election cycle. Experts paint a vivid picture.
As we speak today in the Lagos State House of Assembly, we have only 4 women. At the national level, at the Senate, we have just 4 of the 109. And at the House of Representatives, we have 15 of the 360. The numbers were slightly better in the last cycle. It feels like there has been a regression of sorts.
In March 2022, the Senate and House of Representatives threw out 5 proposals meant to give women more concessions in politics. 3 of those bills were recorded for consideration, but nothing has been heard since then.
We got judgment that there must be 35% affirmative action of the inclusion of women in appointments. We noticed that without discussing it, without making it public, government sneaked into the constitution and amended section 146 of the constitution to read that not less than 10%.
While some women have shattered the glass ceiling in governance and politics, gender experts believe more work still needs to be done to strike a balance. In Lagos for News Central, Omolola Ololade.
The authorities of Onitsha South local government area of Anambra State have demolished illegal structures and shanties along the bank of River Niger by Niger Street in Onitsha. The exercise restarted on Sunday, saw demolition of machine houses, stores and sand beaches of sand miners and traders doing business along the area. The demolition affected several equipment houses, shops and business premises, and it's coming barely a month. Over 2,300 shops in the same area were demolished by the council area. The demolition was supervised by the chairman of Onitsha South local government area, Emeka Oji, along with over 15 operatives of the Anambra State Vigilante Service. Speaking during the exercise, Oji re-emphasized the state government's determination towards reclaiming the land from the present occupiers. You're live with News Central TV. Let's take a short break. Stay with us. Thank you for staying tuned. The news continues in North Africa, where leaders of Tunisia, Algeria and Libya agreed on Monday to work together to fight irregular immigration and speed up electricity interconnection. Tunisian President Kais Saied, Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune, and President of Libyan Presidency Council Mohamed Al-Menfi voiced a consensus in a joint declaration at the end of the first consultative meeting among the leaders of the 3 neighboring countries. In the declaration, the leaders agreed to form joint working groups to oversee security along the common border and fight against irregular immigration and all forms of organized crime. The UK readied on Tuesday to start detaining migrants within days for deportation of Rwanda after a controversial plan got Parliament's approval, sparking outrage from the UN and rights groups. The new legislation, a flagship policy of the Conservative government that aims to curb irregular cross-channel migration from northern France, cleared its final hurdle after a marathon late-night parliamentary tussle on Monday. Just hours later, French police said at least 5 migrants, including a child, died overnight during an attempt to cross the busy shipping lane in a small boat. Under the UK scheme, Undocumented asylum seekers arriving in Britain would be sent to Rwanda, where their asylum claims would be examined and, if approved, would allow them to stay in Rwanda.
Yield. This is awful legislation. It is cruel. It is inept. It is expensive. We should vote the amendments through. The law should keep going. The government should concede.
This bill does comply with international law. It is profoundly moral and patriotic to defend the integrity of our borders. It's profoundly moral and
Beijing says the arrest of an aide to a German far-right politician on suspicion of spying for China was designed to smear and suppress its image. It's also condemned U.S. claims that Beijing was fueling the Ukraine war by supplying components to Russia, which it uses for its military expansion. China and Russia have ramped up economic cooperation and diplomatic contacts in recent years, and the strategic partnership has only grown closer since the invasion of Ukraine. Beijing says it is a neutral party in the Ukraine conflict, but has been criticized for refusing to condemn Moscow for its offensive.
我们注意到有关的报道和相关的炒作，实际上呢，大家也都看得很清楚。近一段时期所谓的中国间谍威胁论，在欧洲舆论场并不新鲜。近年来，更是每在中欧双方高层互动的前后，就会出现。
The Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission has directed the transfer of regulatory oversight of the electricity market in the Enugu State to the Enugu State Electricity Regulatory Commission, effective from May 1st, 2024. This marks the first instance of NEC delegating such authority to a state-owned regulatory body in line with amended Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the Electricity Act of 2023. NEC will maintain its role as the central regulator with oversight on interstate, international generation, transmission, supply, trading, and system operations. The Enugu State government has complied with the legal requirements, duly notifying NEC and requesting the transfer of regulatory oversight of the intrastate electricity market. Under the new legal framework, states have the authority to manage and regulate their electricity market, including setting and adopting end-user electricity tariffs tailored to local conditions. The federal government has announced the operational launch of the MSME and manufacturing segment under the presidential 200 billion naira intervention fund. The Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Doris Uzo-Kanete, made this announcement in a post on her X, formerly Twitter page on Monday. According to her, 75 billion naira will be distributed to MSMEs, while another 75 billion naira will be distributed to the manufacturing industry under the Presidential Intervention Fund. He said that following the ongoing disbursement targeted at the supporting 1 million nano business across the country, the government has decided to include both MSMEs and manufacturers in the initiative. The Nigeria Football Federation announced the launch of football awards aimed at honoring the best players and coaches in the Nigerian game each month. These awards will feature 7 categories initially, highlighting the contributions of players and coaching staff across the sport. The NFF Awards not only aim to recognize individual excellence, but also offer sponsorship opportunities for companies and institutions to support the growth and sustainability of Nigerian football. With a focus on celebrating achievement, engaging fans, and promoting Nigerian football globally, the NFF Awards project is poised to become a cornerstone program for the sports in the country. The NFF anticipates that these awards and associated conversations will boost efforts to revitalize domestic leagues and attract private sector interest in Nigerian football. And that's all on the news. Thank you so much for watching. Do send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen and follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch us live on DSTV, channel 422, Star Times Channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Adebola Adediba.